Hi everyone and welcome back to Vector Lab. Today we're going to show you how to run evals using both the UI and then do it programmatically.
Okay, so let's start by what is an eval.
Yeah, so evaluations or eval is just a way for you to test your model outputs. I think we've mentioned it already in some of the videos that we've done, but before you go to production, you just need to make sure that whatever your model is going to output meets all your criteria. So whether it's about the content of the responses or even just the style. So it's about defining the expectations on how your LLM is going to perform, and then once you have that, you can test and iterate on your app until it will fulfill all those expectations. And that's a really important step because if you don't do it, it's quite likely that you're not going to be able to go to production, especially if you build something that is customer facing, for example, and you need to make sure that it provides the right answers.
So should we deep dive on how to create these evals?
Yes. So let me share my screen. So I'm just going to go through the documentation and then we can jump on a quick demo. So when you do evals on the OpenAI platform, first you're going to create an eval. So again, it's a task that is going to be done by a model. And I'm going to follow this example here that we have in the documentation where we want to classify IT support tickets in 3 categories. So it's a hardware, software, or so far, so good. You just have your instructions here, your ticket, and then we're going to have a model response. All right.
Okay, yeah. So an eval then has two main ingredients that I can see. So which are those?
Yes, exactly. So you have 2 ingredients. You have your data source config. So that's where you're going to put the schema of your test data that you're going to use for the eval. And then you need an actual testing criteria. So how are you going to evaluate? How are you going to determine whether it's a good response or not? And for this, you can choose many things. It can be an exact string match, or maybe you're going to assign a score between 0 and 1, etc. There are lots of different graders as mentioned here. And so that's what comes into your eval object. So first you're going to have, again, the schema of your test data. So in this case, you're going to have the ticket text and then the correct label. So meaning the ground truth. And then you're going to have your testing criteria. And so in this example, they put a string check. So you're going to have the input, which is the response of the model, and you're going to evaluate it against the reference, which is the ground truth, the correct label that we expect. And once you create this object, you're going to have, it's going to have a unique ID, which is going to be important for the next steps. So this is what you're going to have here.
Amazing. Then, so now you have defined the eval. So how do you apply?
Yes. Now that you have your eval defined, then the next step, as shown here, is going to be to upload your test data that will have both the inputs and the ground truth labels. And so you're going to use, again, those ground truth labels to compare the model outputs against the ground truth and see how well it performs. And the uploaded dataset is going to have an ID as well that we're going to reference later. So now we have our eval object, we have our test data, and we're ready to create a run. So where we're going to evaluate a prompt and see how well it performs against our test criteria, which is the string check, right? So this is the code snippet on how to create a run. As you can see, it's fairly easy. So you just need to specify a model, and then you have, your instructions here, and here the ticket text. And this is something that you should not forget. This is where you reference those unique IDs we just talked about. So your eval ID and then file ID. So far, so good. And so this is the response that you're going to get once you create the run. So if it's successfully created, as shown here, you're going to get this type of API response. And one thing I actually forgot to mention here with those double brackets, this is what allows you to use a dynamic variable. So in this case, it's you loop over each ticket, basically the text of each ticket from the text data that you uploaded, right? And then once your run is when your runs, you can analyze the results. And if you want to receive updates when the run is successful or it fails or is canceled, you can always create a webhook endpoint and subscribe to these events. But then you can also just look at, fetch the current status via the API, where you use, again, the ID of your eval and then the eval run.
Cool. So then these graders or judges, so what is it and where is it running? Is it like fine-tuned models? What is it?
I think so. Maybe it will be helpful if we jump directly. So let me go into the playground. So now we're in the playground. So we're going to create an eval run with the UI. So just so that we can get a sense of how it works at a high level, then we're going to do the exact same programmatically. So what I did actually is to ask ChatGPT to create a fake test data set for me so that I can try and run the example that we have in the documentation that we just looked at. So here I have a few options, and I'm going to start by uploading a file. So let me fetch this file. So this is the test data set that I've generated. So it has two columns. First, you have your ticket text. So for example, hey, the printer is offline. And then we have the label. And here, this is the correct label, meaning this is our ground truth. And we want to check that our LLM output matches this ground truth. I'm going to tick this box that says generate new responses. So using inputs from your test data. Here you could choose which column should be treated as images. We don't have that here. And here, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I think this is when you already have some responses and you don't want to create new ones. In that case, you could check it here. Not 100% sure. So if anyone has the answer to this, feel free to comment on the video.
Hypothesize that the previous click that you did that says generate new responses. So if you had already hit an LLM to calculate the predictions, then you don't need to pay again by hitting an LLM to create the responses, right? So you can just ping them through the import as a response.
Exactly. That's also my hypothesis. So now let's click next, and I'm just going to give it a name. And here we have our prompt. So first, I'm going to give it the instructions. So it's, again, the exact same that we saw in the documentation. You're an expert in categorizing IT support tickets, and you're going to categorize that in one of those categories. Then I'm going to add a user message. So for this, I'm just going to write something along the lines of analyze this ticket. And I'm again going to use those brackets here so that I can loop over each ticket and, like put it into the user message. For this run, I'm just going to keep it here at GPT-5, but you could select which model you want to test, and then you can change a bunch of things. So for example, the reasoning, effort, etc., the verbosity, things like that. I'm just going to
kind of which model to use, given that we're evaluating, so we need to reason if something is good or bad. So is GPT-5 the right choice?
Yeah, I think you could. So it could be you want to start with GPT-5, or you could start with any other model. Let's say, for example, you start with GPT-5, which is our most powerful model at the moment, but then you want to see, oh, does it perform as well with, another model that's possibly cheaper, and then see what's the loss in accuracy that I have. And this loss, is it something that I can live with because, it's cheaper? Or, is that so inaccurate that maybe I want to keep a powerful model? This is the power of Evals right there, because you could test lots of different models and see which one you prefer. And that's really dependent on your use case, on your budget, on the latency that you want, all those things. And obviously you could test, as you say, with lots of different parameters to see which one you like the most.
If you do the add that says under GPT-5, it says add, is it going to add a new model?
Here is just adding some hosted
Got it. Okay.
To it. So in case you want to do something where the model is going to leverage. Right. I didn't see that. Custom actions, you can add it. It's very cool. So let's click next. And this is back to your question around graders. So now I'm going to define the criteria. How do I want to evaluate the response? And to answer your question, you have lots of different graders. So you could do a simple string check where you're going to have the input and you want to make sure that it's exactly the same output. But you could also, like you could have a score between 0 and 1. Here in this case, because we want to classify data, probably a model labeler is best. And this is a bit LLM as a judge. So you can assign a score. And here, I don't think it would make sense and it would probably be best to have a model labeler. But if you want, I think I saw it's here. Yeah, you could import your own grader. So it could be technically any JSON that you want. So it's
Like
really
any JSON defining a way to score.
exactly, yeah. So it can be as custom as you want. Here, I'm just going to use this grader, and what I'm going to here, I have prepared some instructions ahead of time. So here I said you are grading your classification. This is the model prediction. This is the ground truth. Return exactly one label, pass or fail. And then I did a bunch of rules.
Amazing.
All right. And then here, pass for pass and then fail for fail. Right.
So the difference then between this and the string checker is that the
yes,
string checker will try to match exactly the word, whereas this model one, I guess, will reason a little bit that if there's a misspelling, if there is lowercase versus uppercase, if semantically it's similar, I guess it's gonna pass it or fail it.
exactly. Yes, exactly. So now I'm just going to save it. So now we have our criteria and then I can click on next. And I think now it's all ready to run because we have, well, a name, then we have our inputs test data set. We have a run with the test criteria. So let's just click on run. So it might take a while to loop over all the examples that I have. So I already pre-run something that I can show you. This is what you're going to take a look at when it's completed. And in this case, it had a score of 87%. I can click on this. I can see you have your ticket test. It looped over each ticket that we have. There's the correct label. There's what our model that we're testing. This is the output of the model that we're testing. And this is the grader and whether it judged that it failed or passed. So for example, Wi-Fi very slow. Actually, I asked ChatGPT to generate this test data for me. I'm not sure it did a great job with all the correct labels because I'm not sure that's hardware. We outputted other, but it was conflicting with the ground truth, which is why it failed. But this is a good reminder, always check your data and make sure that it makes sense. And so here we can examine every answer and then see, are we happy with this model? Do we want to keep this model? Or maybe is there a model that will perform better or one that's cheaper, etc., etc.
Amazing.
And here I can also add run. That means I can also rerun the same eval with a different prompt or model. So that takes back to a lot of, I think we've said that a lot on our videos. Always start with a baseline and then start iterating and improving your app. And so you can change your prompt, you can change your model. There's so many different things that you can change. It's always good to test them one by one, not all at the same time, and then see how it's performing. And so here, I tried GPT-5 with medium reasoning, but maybe I will give it low reasoning and see maybe the responses are still great and I don't need it to think for a long time to give the answer, for example.
And so for each of these runs, you can attach kind of metadata for the prompt version or what model was being used.
Yeah, yeah. I think that at least when you go back to our run, then you have your name when it was run.
Yes.
And then like you can see the score. And so here you can see I tested that a bunch of times. You can see how it performed. Right. So we've seen the doc, we've seen how to do it with the UI, but then you can do it programmatically very easily. So you're going to see the same syntax that we saw. You first create your eval object, with the ticket label, the ticket text, and then the ground truth. Then you define your testing criteria. For example, this time we're going to do a string check. Then you can upload your data sets, and then you can kick off your run where you give it a name. It's everything we saw in the UI, just written as code. Here we use a different model. For example, we give it still instructions and we tell it to loop over each ticket to give an answer. And so here, if I just do, whoops, Python run it here, let's just run the script. Okay, it didn't work. Oh. What now? Oh no, it did work here. So you have an eval created, the dataset is uploaded, and then we have a run. So here, eval run with the ID 68D67. If we go back, it should appear here. So you can see the run appeared here, even though we kicked it off programmatically. And that's the end.
Sounds good. Amazing. Thanks, Lara.